It was a rainy Saturday afternoon when my little sister Emily and I found ourselves at McDonald's, nestled in a quiet corner of our small town. Mom had promised us a treat after enduring a grueling morning of errands, and a happy meal was just the thing to lift our spirits. The golden arches beckoned us inside, and soon enough we were giggling our way towards the colorful play place. As soon as we stepped into the play area, a wave of nostalgia hit me. The plastic tunnels and ball pit seemed smaller than I remembered, but to Emily it was a magical kingdom waiting to be explored. She darted in, her blonde pigtails bouncing with every step, and I followed close behind, pretending to be the brave knight protecting her from imaginary dragons. We hadn't been playing for long when I noticed something odd. In the corner of the play area, a group of kids seemed to be playing quietly. They were dressed in outdated clothes, like something from the 1980s, bright neon colors and oversized shirts. I shrugged it off at first, thinking maybe they were just kids from a nearby birthday party, but as I glanced back, I noticed they were staring at us with wide, unblinking eyes. "Emily, let's play over here," I called, guiding her toward the slide. She squealed in delight and scampered up the steps, oblivious to the strange kids in the corner, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. As we played, I kept catching glimpses of those kids. They never seemed to move, just stood there silently watching us. Each time I looked, their stares seemed to grow colder, more intense. I decided to ignore them, focusing instead on making sure Emily had fun. But when I glanced back again, they were gone. "Hey, where did those kids go?" I asked Emily, trying to sound casual. She shrugged. "Maybe they went home," but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The air in the play place felt heavy, almost suffocating, and then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw one of the kids again, this time standing right at the entrance to the ball pit. It was a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, with long black hair that hung in tangled strands around her face. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. "Emily, we need to go." She looked at me puzzled. "But I'm not done playing." "Just for a little bit," I urged, trying to keep my voice steady. I grabbed her hand and led her toward the exit, keeping my eyes on the strange girl in the ball pit. But as we approached, she disappeared again, as if she had never been there at all. We made it back to our table, where Mom was waiting with our food. I tried to put on a brave face, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced around the restaurant, half expecting to see those ghostly kids staring at us from every corner. "Is everything okay?" Mom asked, noticing the worried look on my face. "Yeah, everything's fine," I replied, forcing a smile. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Those kids weren't normal. They were like ghosts haunting the play place with their eerie silence. As we finished our meal, Emily begged to go back and play some more. I hesitated, torn between wanting to keep her safe and not wanting to scare her. In the end, I relented, but I made sure to keep a close eye on her from our table. Minutes turned into hours as Emily played, laughter echoing through the play area. Just as I started to relax, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye, a movement in the shadows near the slide. My heart skipped a beat as I saw them again. The ghostly kids, standing in a tight circle, their eyes fixed on Emily. "Emily, come here," I called, my voice shaking. She looked up, her face flushed from playing. "But I'm having fun." "Emily, please," I pleaded, my voice barely a whisper now. She sighed but started walking towards me, and that's when it happened. From the corner of the play area, a ball rolled towards her feet, as if thrown by an invisible hand. Emily picked it up, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Who threw that?" she asked, looking around. I scanned the play place, my heart racing. There was no one there. No kids, no parents, just an empty play place and the faint sound of rain against the windows. "Let's go," I said, grabbing her hand and practically dragging her towards the exit. "But I don't want to leave yet," Emily protested, tears welling up in her eyes. "We have to," I insisted, my voice trembling. "It's not safe here." Mom looked up, concern etched on her face, as she saw us rushing towards her. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice filled with worry. I didn't know how to explain it. How could I tell her about the ghostly kids, about the feeling of being watched, about the ball that had rolled towards Emily as if tossed by unseen hands? "We just need to leave," I said finally, unable to find the words. Mom nodded, sensing my urgency. She gathered our things and led us towards the door, casting one last glance back at the play place. And that's when I saw them again, the ghostly kids, standing at the window, their faces pressed against the glass. My heart stopped as our eyes locked for just a moment. Their expressions were blank, devoid of emotion, yet somehow filled with longing. And then, in an instant, they were gone. We hurried out into the rain, the cold drops pelting against our faces as we ran towards the car. I glanced back once more, but the play place was empty now. Just a brightly lit room with colorful toys scattered across the floor. As we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had narrowly escaped something sinister. The memory of those ghostly kids haunted me. Their silent stares burned into my mind, and I wondered, as we disappeared into the rainy afternoon, if we had left them behind, or if they had followed us home. The rain continued to drum against the car windows as we drove away from McDonald's, my heart still racing from the eerie encounter in the play place. Emily had fallen asleep in the back seat, her face peaceful in the soft glow of passing streetlights. I glanced at Mom in the rearview mirror. Her knuckles were white against the steering wheel, a silent testament to her own unease. "I think we need to talk about what happened back there," Mom finally said, breaking the tense silence that had settled over us like a fog. I swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. "Those kids, they weren't normal, Mom. They were like ghosts or something." Mom frowned, her brow furrowed with concern. "What do you mean, ghosts?" I hesitated, unsure how to describe the unsettling feeling of being watched, of the strange movements in the shadows, of the ball that seemed to roll towards Emily on its own. They were there one moment and gone the next, and then they appeared at the window, staring at us. Mom glanced back at Emily, her expression softening. "Do you think they were dangerous?" "I don't know," I admitted, feeling helpless. "But something didn't feel right. We had to leave." Mom nodded slowly, digesting my words. "We'll keep an eye out. Maybe it was just some kids playing a prank." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't shake the chill that had settled deep in my bones. As we pulled into our driveway, I glanced once more at the back seat, relieved to see Emily still sleeping peacefully. But as I turned back towards the house, a movement caught my eye, a figure standing under the street lamp across the street. My breath caught in my throat. It was one of them, the ghostly kids from McDonald's, dressed in their outdated clothes, staring at me with those cold, unblinking eyes. Panic surged through me, and without thinking, I bolted from the car towards the safety of our front door. "Mom, there's someone out there," I shouted, my voice echoing in the quiet night. Mom hurried after me, her footsteps quickening as she reached my side. "Where? What are you talking about?" I pointed frantically towards the street lamp. They're watching us." But when Mom looked, the figure was gone, vanished into the shadows like a phantom. She frowned, her concern deepening. "Are you sure you saw someone?" I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. "I saw them, Mom. They were there." Mom took a deep breath, trying to stay calm for both of us. "Okay, let's get inside." We hurried into the house, locking the door behind us. Mom checked all the windows and turned on every light, casting long shadows across the walls. Emily stirred in her sleep, mumbling softly as Mom tucked her into bed. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The memory of those ghostly kids burned into my mind. As the night wore on, I lay awake in bed, listening to the rain tapping against the window. Every creak of the house made my pulse quicken. Every shadow seemed to hide a lurking presence. And then, just as I was beginning to drift off, I heard it, a soft tapping sound coming from Emily's room. My heart leaped into my throat as I tiptoed down the hallway, my hands clammy with fear. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, like someone gently rapping on Emily's window. I pushed open her door and gasped in horror. There, pressed against the glass, were the ghostly kids. Their faces were pale and hollow, their eyes wide and unblinking as they stared at Emily's sleeping form. One of them, a boy with tousled hair and a faded baseball cap, was tapping on the window with an ethereal finger. "Hey, what are you doing?" I shouted, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. The kids didn't react. They just kept staring, their expressions blank and emotionless. The tapping continued, a haunting rhythm that filled the room with dread. "Mom, Dad," I yelled, hoping desperately that they would come running. But there was no response. The house remained eerily silent, as if we were trapped in a nightmare with no escape. I took a step closer to the window, my hands shaking uncontrollably. "Leave her alone," I pleaded, my voice breaking. Still, the ghostly kids didn't move. They just stared, their presence casting a chill over the room. And then, as suddenly as they had appeared, they were gone, vanishing into thin air like wisps of smoke. I collapsed onto the floor, tears streaming down my face. Emily stirred in her bed, waking with a start. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight. "It's okay, Em. You're safe now." But even as I said the words, I knew we weren't safe. Those ghostly kids had followed us home, and I didn't know how to protect Emily or myself from whatever they wanted. The rest of the night passed in a blur of fear and uncertainty. Mom and Dad searched the house from top to bottom, but there was no sign of the ghostly intruders. They assured us it was just our imagination, that there was nothing to be afraid of. But I knew better. Life slowly returned to normal. or at least as normal as it could be, with the memory of those ghostly kids haunting every corner of my mind. Emily seemed unaffected, her laughter echoing through the house once more. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that those ghostly kids were still out there, waiting. I started researching, scouring the internet for any mention of similar encounters. I found stories of children who had seen ghostly figures in playgrounds, in old buildings, in places where tragedy had struck. They all had one thing in common: the ghosts were never harmless. One night, as I sat in my room reading about paranormal encounters, a chill swept through the air. I glanced up, my heart pounding, and there they were, the ghostly kids, standing at the foot of my bed. "What do you want?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. They didn't answer. They just stood there watching me with those cold, unblinking eyes, and then without warning they vanished once more, leaving me alone in the silence of my room. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. The ghostly kids appeared more frequently now, their visits growing longer and more unsettling. They never spoke, never harmed us physically, but their presence was suffocating, a constant reminder of something I couldn't understand. I tried talking to Mom and Dad about it, but they dismissed it as stress, as an overactive imagination. They didn't see the ghostly kids lurking in the shadows, didn't hear the soft tapping at the windows late at night. One evening, as I sat alone in my room, I heard Emily giggling downstairs. Curious, I crept down the stairs, my heart racing with a mixture of fear and determination. I found her in the living room, surrounded by her dolls, chatting animatedly as if she had an invisible friend. "Emily, who are you talking to?" I asked, my voice trembling. She looked up, her eyes bright with innocence. "The kids from McDonald's. They're nice." My blood turned to ice. "What do you mean, Emily?" She shrugged, oblivious to my growing terror. "They come to play with me sometimes. They said they like having friends." "No, Emily," I said firmly, trying to keep my voice steady. "You can't play with them. They're not real." Emily's face fell, her lower lip trembling. "But they're my friends." I struggled to find the right words, torn between protecting Emily and wanting to understand what was happening. "Emily, listen to me. Those kids, they're not like us. But before I could finish, a cold breeze swept through the room, sending shivers down my spine. I turned towards the window, and there they were, the ghostly kids, their faces pressed against the glass, their eyes locked on Emily. "Go away," I shouted, my voice filled with desperation. But the kids didn't move. They just stared, their presence filling the room with an oppressive silence. And then, as quickly as they had appeared, they vanished once more, leaving behind a trail of uncertainty and fear. I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. How could I protect Emily from something I didn't understand? How could I keep her safe from the ghostly kids who seemed determined to be a part of our lives? The encounters with the ghostly kids became more frequent. They appeared in the mirror when I least expected it, their faces hovering just behind my reflection. They whispered in the darkness of my room at night, their voices soft and haunting. I couldn't escape them. They were everywhere, lurking in the shadows, watching, waiting. And with each passing day, Their presence grew stronger, more insistent, as if they were trying to communicate something beyond words. One evening, as I sat alone in my room, a soft tapping sound drew my attention to the window. I glanced up, half expecting to see the ghostly kids staring back at me, but instead there was nothing, just the quiet emptiness of the night. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement, a faint shimmering in the darkness, like a figure stepping out of the shadows. My heart raced as the figure took shape, its features becoming clearer with each passing moment. It was one of the ghostly kids, but this time there was something different about him. He looked older than the others, perhaps around my age, with a solemn expression etched on his face. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible in the stillness of the night. The boy didn't speak, but his eyes held a sadness that pierced through me. He gestured towards the window, his hand trembling slightly. I followed his gaze, expecting to see the other ghostly kids, but instead, all I saw was my own reflection, a pale, frightened face staring back at me. "Please," the boy finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Help us." I shook my head, unable to comprehend what was happening. "What do you want from us?" He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "We're trapped. We need your help." I wanted to run, to scream for Mom and Dad, but something in his gaze held me in place. "How can I help you?" The boy hesitated, as if unsure how to explain. "There's something keeping us here, something we can't escape." "Who did this to you?" I asked, my voice trembling. He shook his head, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "We don't know. We've been here for so long, trapped between worlds." My mind raced with 1,000 questions, but before I could ask another, the boy started to fade, his form dissolving into mist. "Please," he pleaded one last time, "find a way to set us free." And then he was gone, leaving me alone in the darkness, grappling with the weight of his words. The following morning, I tried to push the encounter with the boy out of my mind, but his words echoed in my thoughts like a haunting melody. Emily seemed oblivious to my inner turmoil, playing with her dolls as if nothing had happened. Mom and Dad carried on with their daily routines, unaware of the spectral visitors that plagued our home. But I couldn't shake the encounter with the older boy. His plea for help haunted me day and night, driving me to delve deeper into finding a solution. I spent hours researching and scouring through old records, trying to uncover any clues that could explain why the ghostly kids were trapped and how I could possibly set them free. In the following days, the ghostly kids appeared sporadically, each time leaving me with more questions than answers. One night, as I sat at my desk, surrounded by scattered papers and dim candlelight, I stumbled upon an old news article buried deep in the archives. The headline sent a chill down my spine. "Tragic playground incident claims lives of local children." The article detailed a devastating accident that occurred decades ago at the site where the McDonald's now stood. A group of children had been playing in the old playground equipment when a sudden structural failure caused a fatal collapse. Several children lost their lives that day, their spirits forever bound to the place of their untimely deaths. Could these be the same children haunting the McDonald's play area? Were they seeking closure, unable to move on from the tragic events that had taken their lives? Armed with this newfound knowledge, I felt a sense of determination. I needed to find a way to communicate with the ghostly children, to understand their plight and offer them the peace they deserved. But first, I had to convince Mom and Dad of the reality of our situation. They had dismissed my earlier concerns as childhood fears, but now I had tangible evidence to support my claims. Gathering my courage, I sat Mom and Dad down one evening and shared everything I had discovered. I showed them the news article explaining how the tragic events of the past had left lingering spirits tied to the playground. To my relief, they listened attentively, their expressions gradually shifting from skepticism to concern. "We need to help them," I pleaded, my voice trembling with emotion. "They're trapped, and they need our help to move on." Mom and Dad exchanged a glance, their brows furrowed with worry. After a long moment of silence, Dad spoke up, his voice filled with determination. "All right, we'll help however we can." With Mom and Dad's support, I embarked on a mission to communicate with the ghostly children. I returned to the McDonald's playground, armed with offerings of toys and flowers, hoping to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. I spoke softly to the air, addressing the children with heartfelt sincerity, urging them to find peace and release their earthly tethers. Days passed with no apparent response, but I persisted, visiting the playground whenever I could, leaving tokens of goodwill and offering prayers for their souls. And then, one rainy afternoon, much like the day we first encountered them, something changed. As I stood near the entrance to the play area, a gentle breeze brushed against my cheek, carrying with it a faint whisper of laughter. I turned, heart pounding with anticipation, and saw them, the ghostly children no longer staring with empty eyes but smiling faintly, their forms shimmering in the soft light. "We hear you," a young girl's voice echoed in my mind, her tone filled with gratitude and relief. Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized they could finally hear me, that my efforts had not been in vain. "You can move on now," I whispered, my voice choked with emotion. "Find peace." The children nodded solemnly, their expressions serene as they slowly faded from view, their presence dissipating like morning mist. I stood there overwhelmed with a mix of sadness and relief, knowing that I had helped them find the closure they desperately needed. From that day on, the ghostly children no longer haunted the McDonald's play area. Emily continued to play there without fear, and our lives gradually returned to normalcy. Mom and Dad supported me through it all, their belief in my experiences solidifying our bond as a family. But I never forgot the lessons I learned from the ghostly children, the importance of compassion, understanding, and the enduring power of love to transcend even the boundaries between life and death. And as I grew older, I carried their memory with me, a testament to the profound impact they had on my life. As for Emily, she eventually outgrew her imaginary friends from McDonald's, moving on to new adventures and friendships. But sometimes, late at night, when the rain tapped against the windows, I would catch her staring out into the darkness with a thoughtful expression, as if remembering the ghostly children who had once sought her company. And in those quiet moments, I would whisper a silent prayer, hoping that wherever they were now, they had found the peace and happiness they had been denied in life.
that wraps up our tale from the rainy afternoon at McDonald's. What an adventure it was. If you enjoyed hearing about our encounter with the ghostly children, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. If you're new here and want to join us for more mysterious stories and explorations, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We'd love to have you as part of our community. And hey, if you've ever experienced something spooky or unexplained like this, share your story in the comments below. We always love hearing from you. Thanks so much for watching and supporting our channel. Until next time, take care and stay curious. Bye for now.